Hey everyone, Jeff here from Films at Home. Thanks for coming back to the podcast today. In today's episode, we have a pretty exciting guest. This guy worked at Fox Home Entertainment, 20th Century Fox, before they got acquired by Disney and after the acquisition for a little bit. He was a title manager for DVD, Blu-ray, and 4K releases. So we're talking to Adam Yeend. He spent the last 13 years or so in LA working in the film industry. He's done really cool things in film, and as a title manager at 20th Century Fox and Disney, he worked on sets like Alien 4K, Ford versus Ferrari. He worked on the Predator set, Bohemian Rhapsody, Bad Times at the El Royale, Die Hard 4K. He worked on a ton of the Fox 4K titles, and so he has some really good insights into the world of Fox Home Entertainment and how that all came together with Disney and sort of what's going on in that space. But he's also worked in compression and authoring facilities as well. It's actually his current job is at one of LA's biggest authoring and compression facilities, and he's also a writer and a filmmaker. So he writes right now for Dark Horizons, another website, and he also writes A-Frame for the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, aka the Academy Awards, and he covers 4K releases for them in a new series. So we're going to talk to Adam today about all that stuff, all his experience, and I think you guys will really enjoy this. And he has some really cool insights into what might be floating around out there at Fox that's yet to be released at Disney, what's going on with some of James Cameron's titles. Really great conversation. So it's a long one, so sit back and relax and enjoy this, and I'll talk to you guys at the end of the video. All right, guys, here with Adam Yeend with our interview today. Adam, thanks for coming out. Thanks for joining us on the podcast. Awesome to have you here, considering your background. I've got a lot of questions and a lot to talk about, so this should be a good one.
Thanks, Jeff. Very excited. Thank you for having me. Hey, everyone.
So I told people in the introduction, you've done a lot of stuff. First of all, I was blown away by the bio, the fact that you just like casually mentioned, hey, I sat next to Morgan Freeman for an entire Oscar ceremony, like unbelievable. But you worked as the title manager at Fox for 5 years. So I guess what does that mean? What is a title manager?
Well, I didn't know either. So, I mean, there were several of us. It wasn't just me. There was obviously Fox put out like a lot of content. And there were a multitude of us in this tech ops division that liaised with the content and marketing department. And my role as a title manager in terms of how it pertained to physical was to essentially be like the middleman, I would call it, that, does the everything from, marketing and content will tell us they have a title coming and we'll have a spec created and what's going to go on it. They will say, we're putting this director's commentary. This is how long it is and blah, blah, blah. And we'll then take all of that information and reach out to multiple vendors, to see who wants to do the compression and authoring, who's going to subtitle it, do menus, chapters, and all that good stuff. And then, budget it. And then we select our vendors, and it's pretty much, as a title manager, similar to like a project manager. You have like a schedule, and then you are facilitating the creation of the disc by, all the assets coming through and making sure that the compression and authoring house, which was usually one of two that we worked with, received all the stuff they needed on time to be able to get us a check disc and get it through QC. And so there's a lot of like in between that, you're working on multiple titles at once that are in different stages. I started out doing TV titles. So I think my first title was, season 4 or 5 of Homeland, the Blu-ray set. And I was doing Empire and American Horror Story before I moved to doing theatrical titles. So there's just continually like all these different moving parts and you have to keep track of them. And finally, you end up hopefully on time with a check disc and, QC report, and you start, doing all that sort of going through the QC and what needs fixing, and eventually get Fox Media Services to burn a disc. And then I will go there across the lot, meet with the marketing and content people, and we'll go through the disc, make sure it's functionally working, the menus work, and we'll just all review it together. And then after that, and it's been passed and all the QC issues are resolved, you ship it off to replication, and hope then I would go to the studio store in like 3 months, and there the disc would be. So, or Target or wherever.
Yeah. So it would take that long that when would you start working on, say a movie came out this weekend? When are you starting to work on the disc?
Yeah, we're usually working on it. Well, we usually at the week or two before the theatrical. We have like a kickoff call, and then they would introduce this film's coming out this week, and they'd usually say, "Please go see it." Although they had screenings on the lot every Friday of any new movie that we had coming out, you could have your lunch break and go see a movie at the Zanuck Theatre, which was one of the perks of working at a studio that I loved. I didn't know myself when I started working at Fox because it just was too much fun. Probably about a week or two before theatrical, and usually we'd have a check disc while the film was still in its theatrical run, usually like about week 3 of theatrical or week 4. We'd have a check disc in hand and really be starting to get down to the minute details. And doing a television set like Homeland or Family Guy was continually in progress as the season was airing. So it was they were much longer, not only is there a multitude of discs per set, but we would only get we'd have to wait for that episode to air, and then we'd get like our Pro HQ file, video file, and audio, and then obviously the subtitling house could get to work on it, doing German and French and all that sort of thing. So the TV titles took a long time, but theatrical and then obviously catalog. I worked on Die Hard 4K. I think Die Hard 4K and Red Sparrow were my first film titles that I worked on at Fox. Okay. And subsequently, worked with my boss on Deadpool 2 and the Predator 4K trilogy set that we did. Another colleague of mine did Alien 4K, but it was fun.
Back in the good old days of Fox. So did you? Were you there for the? I can't remember the timeline. Were you there for the acquisition, or did you get out before?
No, I was there for all of it. And I worked for Disney for a period. All of us worked for Disney. We were one of the last departments to be vetted. And let me just say right now, like it's like any time that there is a corporate takeover in any company or any industry, it's challenging for everyone. And I personally loved Fox because of the diversity in genre content. That's really important to me. That we're not. I understand branded content, so Fox would do our X-Men movies and our Ice Ages and that sort of thing. But there was so much original content in a multitude of genres, like your Bohemian Rhapsodies and your Shape of Water and teen movies like Love, Simon and Hate You Give. I felt like they covered that canvas. So Disney, it was kind of a head scratcher. I was more upset at, I think, Murdoch for turning it into like a yard sale kind of thing. But, we were there for it, and we worked 2019 under Disney, and there were a few minor changes, but our Fox workflow still essentially stayed the same, even though I think that the cover art was starting to take on the Disney labeling with the banners and that sort of thing. So, but the discs themselves, like Ford vs. Ferrari and Jojo Rabbit, Widows, Hate You Give, all of those films in 2019 followed the Fox workflow. And I think I actually did the very, very last Fox home entertainment title, which was a Kristen Stewart underwater. It was called Underwater. It was an underwater horror movie, and that was the last, I think, like true Fox home ent title that we got worked on. And then obviously we got folded in. Some of us got folded in, some moved on, and the department was kind of disbanded. But then COVID hit like a week later, so we were all like didn't even get to say bye to each other. It was very kind of anticlimactic. We were very close in our little Fox Angeles building. We'd have potlucks and a little social club and do fun stuff on the lot together. So, but yeah, I did. And then at Disney, I was there for about 6 months and did a little bit of Disney Plus work and did the 4K of Home Alone, which I was, big proponent for trying to get the 4K catalog stuff out.
Yeah, no, it's certainly not the same as it was before when it comes to physical media. I think we all. I try not to be too tough because I know like these mergers they're messy. I've been on the other end in my corporate life where we've bought up companies at the company I was working at, and you try to integrate everybody, and not quite Disney Fox scale, but it's still it's tough, and I get they're still working through it, but it is it feels like that department unfortunately has kind of fizzled out now, as far as I
Yeah,
can tell.
yeah. I think one of my manager actually, he's still at Disney, and I think he's working on Disney Plus now. I do know that the content team that I worked on at Fox, and those guys were worked out of the Die Hard high rise, which is behind the studio lot. That was one of the things about Fox. There was so much iconic stuff around, and like having to walk over to the Die Hard building. I loved it. But those guys, a lot of them are still there, and I know I just checked in with one of them, and they worked on the 4K of Death on the Nile, which is still essentially a Fox title. I think that was the last 20th Century Fox developed and greenlit movie. It was a sequel to Murder on the Orient Express. Everything we're getting post Death on the Nile, for sure, and some of the stuff before Death on the Nile, because it was held over for a long time, is Disney Fox. But so I thought they did a really good job with that disc and had really good Atmos. So
yeah, well, you can tell when there's I don't want to go in on Disney, but there's a difference between what they put on some of their like premiere titles when it comes to Atmos and stuff versus what maybe somebody who used to work at Fox has had a hand in.
Yeah,
Home Alone was a good one too.
Yeah. Everyone's got a different way of doing things. So when I did Home Alone, it was interesting to kind of do essentially the same job but through a different workflow, different software.
Yeah.
All the Disney systems and that. But essentially, I worked with the same authoring house that I would work with at Fox because the studios utilize similar vendors. All of these different, whether it's a subtitling house or a trailer house or a compression and authoring facility, they all have got, they've got a Lionsgate account, a Universal account. They're all working with the studios just to a different workflow. And Home Alone, it came together very easily. But the audio team at Disney was, I worked with Fox audio services, so it was just different. They had different ways of doing stuff. So, and I'm sure they've got different specs that they work to. And I'm not going to say yay or nay about how I'd prefer it. But it's one thing I will say is that there wasn't any, the guys that I work with at Disney were really lovely and, still cared about what they were doing. That they're working to a specific spec, and again, I was only there for 6 months, so I can't, comment much beyond that. So,
yeah, I mean, it feels. I was real tough. I'm always real tough on them, but I felt like lately I feel like Disney develops the audio maybe to just a different spec for the average viewer. That's going to sound good potentially on a sound bar or an Atmos system, which isn't somebody with 11 speakers in their home theater. And that's why the people who are reviewing it may have like, oh, okay, this is a little bit subpar compared to others. But the masses are, as far as I can tell, enjoying what Disney's putting out in the Atmos on Disney Plus and things like that, which is probably not translating over like it should to a typical person's TV. They sell TVs now and they say they have Atmos speakers in them. And it's like, well, that's kind of ridiculous that a TV can have Dolby Atmos. They say it's got, Dolby
it's
audio.
Got directional speakers right at the back. Some probably pointing, diagonally.
It's virtual surround and all this stuff. And so I've thought, well, maybe they're developing it for that person because that really is the 99% of the 100 is that type of person.
And even like what I do for a living, for a lot of my friends, even those that are in the business, not all, I think people that work in the production side, but on the corporate side, not everyone's a snob about the audio and the video. They are just as, like you've talked about streaming a lot, they're fine to stream. They don't get, it's been interesting this week because I've had 2 articles published, and one was for the Academy on the 4K UHD, and someone was like, what is that? And it's like, it's interesting to me because I live in that world. It's what I've done for a job. But for people, it's just they don't. And I'd say probably a huge portion of the population has still got motion smoothing turned on their TV, and they don't. And some are like, they don't notice the difference even when I turn it off. They just don't. And same thing with the audio. So I think if you have the setup, it's great that it's there. I think that it should be available because most of the new theatrical films do get an Atmos mix. But obviously, it's a case by case basis, and it depends on the studio. And again, different studios have got different agendas and how they work and what their priorities are. And Disney's interesting because it's not just a studio. It's very much a focused on its theme parks and travel and about an experience of a brand, and all of their films live like kind of tie into that, and that's fine. Right. That's them, and it's different to Sony, it's different to Paramount, and it was different to Fox. So,
yeah, which is why I've tried to go a little easier on them. They just have it was a different business model. They're not just a media company. It's a conglomerate. It's merchandise. It's theme parks. It's selling toys. That's what they do. So then I think, okay, yeah, it makes perfect sense. You'd want to pick up Star Wars and Marvel because who's selling more toys than the two of them, right? I mean, it's a perfect tie-in to Disney versus a Fox or a Sony who doesn't have those capabilities to really push the brands further. So if I'm Star Wars, yeah, I'd sell to Disney too. Makes sense.
Yeah, it was interesting with Star Wars because there was kind of this weird block because of the deal that Fox had with Star Wars. The very first one, Episode 4, was greenlit by Fox. I think, was Alan Ladd? I think it was. It was Fox owned the distribution rights for that, whereas the subsequent films Lucasfilm did. So when I started working at Fox, I was going to the studio store and there was some Star Wars merch, but it was all pertaining to Episode 4: A New Hope. It had to be, they'd scrapped off everything else that like pertained to anything else, but they still could have like a Darth Vader or that just from that film in the studio store, which was kind of fun. Then until Disney bought the studio, then everything changed in terms of that store. That was always interesting to me. Just that, again, like the rights is just, it's a mess sometimes.
Yeah. And that was always, I haven't been to Disney in a long time, but we went a lot when I was a kid to Florida, the Florida Disney World. Is it Florida's Disney World, California's Disneyland?
That's correct. Yeah.
So we went to Disney World, and I'd be like, they have like the MGM studios, and I think about the movies that were there, and now I think, and I go like, those weren't, I don't get it. Those weren't MGM movies.
Yeah, well, it's happening now, like because Universal Studios here has got Harry Potter Land, which is a Warner Brothers property, and Avatar Land was in Florida before. Fox, before the whole Fox thing, it's like a streaming platform. It's like, why is this Sony movie on HBO Max? And I've written about this before. It's like, I just want to watch Star Trek 6, but it's on Amazon. It's not on Paramount Plus. It's like, why have you only got 5 of the Star Trek movies? And it's the same thing. I mean, it's just they'll sign the rights off, and growing up in Australia as well, like it was very, very different. To sometime when I moved here and would go back and look at a movie, it's like got a totally different studio at the start of it, and I'm just like, I'm used to this logo. It's just,
right.
So it
is confusing out there. And there's so many, as I've started to look more into it, because I'm like, well, why hasn't this movie come out? And it's like, well, issues. Why hasn't this series, like a Friday the 13th, was such a problem? Star Trek gets messy. They all get messy. Nightmare on Elm Street, I don't know if that gets messy. It still hasn't come out. But there's so many like that where it's like, yeah, you get parts 2, 3, 4. We have part 1. You get 6 and 7, and like try to get 3 media conglomerates in a room to sign off on something, and that's why you don't get box sets. I mean, it's horrible.
It's nuts. I mean, for me, Heat growing up was a Warner film, a Warner Brothers film, and here ever since I worked at Fox, they celebrated that film. Like Fox was always, would do screenings, Fox Movie Night, usually once a month, and they'd screen some old 70mm film print of Abyss or a new restoration or something. But like they would, I'm like, I had no idea that was Fox. And when I was at Fox, we did do a 4K of Braveheart, but just for international, because Paramount has the domestic rights for Braveheart. So we were working with the Paramount team. They'd already released it here, but so they had control over a lot of the primary assets, and then we had all the foreign assets. And same thing with Titanic. That is a Paramount film here domestically, but I grew up with that, with the Fox logo at the start of it, not the Paramount. So it's a Fox film. So they've got a lot of the benches from the Titanic set, from the actual ship, are kind of all scattered around the Fox lot with a little plaque on it. In terms of who, So
wow.
Yeah.
It's a crazy, yeah. And then I'm not even thinking international. That gets wild too. And I've been picking up like a lot of the imprint stuff, and I've gotten into Umbrella Entertainment. And you're right. Sometimes I'll be like, this doesn't seem right. This is a different studio behind this.
Yeah, and even just the packaging artwork, because of that's different. You know, we had a whole separate company growing up for VHS, which just, you know, covered Paramount and Universal titles, but they never worked with America. So our cover art and our, you know, layouts and that would be similar to the UK and whatever outside of America. And it wasn't until the internet came around, or I'd see like, you know, movie magazines when I go to Sydney and just look at it, I'd see the advertisement for the American release. I'm like, oh, that's what their poster looks like. You know, it's different. So, yeah.
Well, you mentioned you were writing some for the Academy. That's a new sort of venture. So what are they up to? What are they up to over there? They're kind of promoting 4K restorations and film restoration.
Well, yeah. I mean, they're interested in, you know, obviously celebrating all things film. And a few people that I work with at Fox work over there now, and I've been writing, you know, for a few years now, and and did a piece on physical media last year, which a lot of people read, and I felt like working with them. I've got this new Academy Museum here in LA, which if anyone comes to LA, you have to check it out.
I need to.
It's incredible. And I looked at their site, and I just thought, well, they are continually celebrating all things film, and they're doing retrospectives, and it's an anniversary of this. And so I just, you know, pitched to their editor and said, look, you know, there's all these film restorations. It's kind of a whole like separate industry in that, but they do release them to the public. You obviously can buy it on digital, but, you know, boutique labels put these movies out. And I kind of just gave her a rundown, and she's like, yeah, let's just do, you know, cover, you know, we go over the schedule, and we'll work together on what we think we should put. And I've only done one so far for June. And it's just, I think because I've realized working in this business that so many people still, you know, especially here, even though I said there's some that aren't aware of it, but there's a big proponent for these restorations and for watching an older movie in the best possible quality. And the Academy's also been screening some films too. That's kind of what put me onto it. When I looked at the Academy Museum schedule, they had a film, Mississippi Marsala, and it was a new 4K restoration. And that was when I reached out and said, hey, you guys are screening these restorations. You know, they're available to the public. We should cover them. You know, it's like they do a, you know, summer movie guide, like what's coming out this summer. And so it's like, well, why don't you do what's coming out in terms of older stuff? So, yeah.
No, I love it. It should help get people interested and aware, because you're right. It's an awareness problem. I mean, maybe it's different in LA and people are more just aware of the goings on, but like over here, East Coast, I mean, maybe in New York City where there's like an A24 and HBO's got a setup there. I think like maybe there's some awareness in and around that world, but I walk around and it's like nobody knows what I'm talking about. I try to explain, hey, like they're like, you have a YouTube channel. Wow, how many? You have almost 100,000. What are you doing? And I'm like, oh boy, like you're not gonna get it. I'm gonna try to explain to you, and you're gonna go, oh, so like a DVD, and I'll just be like, yeah, just yes, like a DVD.
Yeah,
like, there's no awareness of it at all.
Yes, yeah, it's interesting. I have managed to convert a few people. There's a few of my, you know, friends that are in the industry. A good mate of mine that we produce a lot of content with. Like he's a huge cinephile, and he makes a living as an editor now, editing Netflix shows and Warner Brothers shows and that. But he, you know, I gave him a little bit of a demo at my house, and then lo and behold, you know, like he's got like, you know, oh, you've got Predator 4K, and you've got this, and you know, he's got this little collection now of discs, and he's got a projector, and another friend of mine as well. It's a huge nerd, and he's definitely a child of the 80s, but we have a lot of similar tastes. And he as well, you know, he came over to my place and we watched something. This is great. It sounds amazing. I've never seen it look like. I don't remember what it was, but then subsequently as well, he's got like about, you know, I think 20 movies now. But he had a huge collection, got rid of it, went digital, and now he's gone back and he's bought like a few of his favorite titles in 4K. So,
which I think is great. Like that's the thing I tell everybody. There's no need to buy as many as I buy. Just grab your favorites. But really, like if most people walked into like one of those 70 millimeter screenings, or like even just a 35 millimeter screening somewhere, I mean, you're going to be blown away by how that movie looks compared to how you're used to seeing it, and to be able to
100%.
take that home. Like I don't think people realize, like, you can actually, this is as close as you can get right now. You can take that home and watch it in your living room, that high quality. And that does blow people away, but you have to show them. Like, you literally have to put it in front of them.
Yeah. Yeah. My in-laws were over a couple of years back, and it was a really hot day here and needed some downtime, and just put on Ford versus Ferrari. And our living room's actually great for, like, it's got kind of for between the roof and the walls, it kind of curves. So it's just like, it just sounds great in there. But like my mother-in-law just was like, when Ford versus Ferrari started, like, it's just, and with that, and she, subsequently again, they got a new TV, and should we get a player? Should we get surround? They like texting me, and, I did like a more of a budgeted setup for them, but it's definitely, it's cool, so, it's interesting. I think people are starting to realize that, you can experience these movies. I think it's how you consume it. And I think we've got bad habits. We've all got to now because of these cell phones and everything. And, I've noticed even friends of mine that we used to do movie night, and that they're still like checking their phone every 2 minutes, and they never used to do that. But it's like, I think that having that kind of setup, it's kind of hard to ignore when it looks and sounds that good. So, but again, so many people again will just watch something on their phone, and I don't know what to say.
Well, I think who's the director that hates that?
I think every director hates that.
I mean, they all do.
Like,
one of them, was it Scorsese? Someone's been super vocal about, like, if you watch my movie on a phone, like, I'll punch you in the face. Like, don't do that. It's an insult to me.
I love Tom Cruise's PSA about the motion smoothing that was on Twitter. That video was great. I mean, people are starting to become aware, but I think all of your guests have said on here and that, but it is, very much like a niche market. Yeah. But it's when you kind of have people over to experience it, or if you host a movie night, that's kind of when people have really kind of gone, oh, this is cool. Like, it's, and even it's something they've seen 100 times, that you can tell, like, they can see the difference when it's an older movie they might have grown up with, like Back to the Future or something, and they can just see that extra detail. It just plays differently.
Well, that's always been my goal. Is I've converted a few people too. I've got my brother into it because he got like a PS5, and now he's buying 4K discs and stuff. And I'm like, well, good. I gave him my old 4K TV. I've converted people, but I've also always just wanted to be that person that had the setup too. So, like, when the kids get older and they're like, I want to watch the latest Star Wars movie, and I'm like, all right, here, call 5 of your friends. Let's do this. Let's put it up on the 120-inch projector screen and, like, blow them away. And just have that space, because it's, I don't know. I knew a couple people with that growing up, and I was always so jealous. Now I'm trying to create it for myself.
Yeah, me too. I had an uncle that had a whole, like, Betamax VHS movie collection. It was like cabinets just full of movies, and just buy everything. And he had all the Donald Duck shorts that he'd buy. Disney released so much back then on home video, and that's kind of what got the bug in me. And my parents, weren't really into it. It was like, it took a while for them to, they're like, why are you buying that? Why do you want, like, using your pocket money to buy? I'm like, yeah, I want these VHS tapes. It was just, for them, they're just like, what? So, it's been there for a while.
Well, hey, now those VHS tapes are selling for like $50,000 or something insane.
I know. I gave so many away. I have I think I've got about 20 VHS tapes I kept, just because they were in such good condition, and the artwork on them and the covers were in just, and some of them are obscure titles that are his personal favorites. Others I'd be interested to see, like, I've not seen them on eBay or anything. Like Fox had international rights to the Ninja Turtle movies, and so they had completely different art. And so I have those and a few others. And I also collected VHS of, I was, a Trek fan in the 90s, but Deep Space Nine would come out 2 episodes on VHS tape a month. And because that show was on at like 11 p.m. when I was growing up, I wasn't allowed to stay up and watch it. I just buy the tapes. But that artwork, I don't know who the artist was. I used to, but I'm getting old and I've forgotten. But the artwork was like hand drawn. It was almost like Star Wars-esque, like original Star Wars movie art, or like, and hand drawn. And each cover had like a different face of one of the characters. And it was I don't know, like it was the artwork that actually got me to watch that damn show. That's what, like, and when I was at the video store, I'm like, that looks cool. Like, what? Oh, Star Trek. I don't know. Like, and that's what did it. It was actually that artwork on that VHS tape. So
It is important though. That still gets me today. Now we're browsing the digital shelves, but like I'm scrolling through. I know it sucks. Well, I still have my local video store. I can hit up, at least in my area, that we talked to on the podcast, Bull Moose, which has been great.
Yeah, listen to that episode. Yeah, if I'm ever over there, I'll check out Bull Moose. Yeah, we have Amoeba here and a few other random boutique stores. But I was here when Blockbuster was still here. I'd moved to LA, but it's it's definitely gone.
But I missed that because I used to do the same thing, and I still do the same thing now. It's like it could be the most obscure movie, but like if Arrow or Shout Factory or Criterion or whoever, if they put out something and I look at it and I go, damn, that's kind of cool, like you're gonna sucker me into probably buying it just because I thought it looked cool, and then we'll see how the movie actually is. But
yeah, it's 100% true. They also had less to work with then, so you had to put in more effort. Now everything's competing for our attention, and we have all these streaming platforms, we have these devices, and it's like you might sit down to watch TV and spend 20 minutes looking through thumbnails, and then also in the interim you've had 4 text messages and an email come through, and that's like so everything is so they had limited means. It was like you had a trailer, you had TV spots, some radio ads, billboards, and a poster on a bus, and then in the video store as well, like you had to get people to entice them to pick up that thing. And I mean, I've done a little bit of research on that, even I'm in school part-time just to try and stay educated. But it's an interesting thing psychologically, because there's something about the thumbnail on the TV, and it happens with actors now too. Can you imagine LA at the time and before digital, when there were literally thousands of headshots going through the mail system, like thousands, and casting directors would be looking at a resume on the back with a headshot. Now they have a screen with hundreds of thumbnails that are just scrolling through, and the photo on the computer monitor or phone, depending whatever device is being used, has to really pop. And I personally, to me, the eye doesn't read it the same. I did a little bit of work after Disney for another studio on a digital account for iTunes, and it always surprised me sometimes with the artwork or the background wallpaper and things like that. When I'm like, especially if it was a catalog movie, and I'd be like, I don't know if that's what I would use to entice people to hit play here, but it's it's difficult. But they'll also do a whole bunch of Instagram posts and everything else to get you to watch it. It's different now. But those VHS tapes, they definitely had, and even the early days of DVD, the artwork definitely sold the movie. If you were going to drive to a store and take that thing home, and that's all you had for 24 hours or a week, you sat and watched it. So yeah, it
is sort of overwhelming now, though. You're right, because I run into that myself, and that's why I'll scroll and it's like, or I'll even honestly just having a collection of this size, sometimes I can sit here for 20 minutes and go, geez, what am I going to pick out of here to watch? And I always go back to the old favorites, or if I'm downstairs and we're on the TV, I'll scroll through Hulu or Netflix for 20 minutes and then be like, all right, I'm just going to watch another episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I just can't, I just go back to the crutch because I'm like, I can't, it's almost overwhelming how much content there is right now, which I don't know. It's gotta pop at some point. This bubble's gotta pop. I guess it's starting to hit Netflix, and they had their issues. It's just so much, though. I don't know how to keep up with Marvel and keep up with Star Wars and keep up with. I want to watch Barry on HBO, but I haven't even gotten a chance to sit down and watch it. It's
that's in my queue as well. Yeah, it is nuts. It's I don't like. It blows my mind, some of my friends, the amount of content they can get through. I don't have the time. But I've tried to set rules for myself, and we don't do the general scrolling in our house. If we've got a combined notes thing on our phone. So if we see a billboard or we see a trailer, or it goes on our notes. So we've got a list of 6 TV shows. And if there's something that I feel I want to go back and watch that movie I have on disc, it goes on that notes thing too. So I'm not, again, I try to be intentional, because otherwise it's just, I will end up putting a rerun of Star Trek or The Simpsons or something like that just to, play it. And, I'm not, and it's not even really what I feel like. It's just like, it's just too much.
Yeah.
But and also the streaming model itself, I think, is they'll figure it out. It's not going away, but these streaming platforms are problematic in the fact that they are not only a studio now, but they also run like a tech company almost. And because of the amount of involvement in terms of the app itself that it takes, and then so they're incredibly expensive to run, and again, like they need to be kept with bombarded with brand new content to kind of keep us focused on that. And Netflix, it's an interesting time. They will level out. They're always going to be the Coca-Cola of streaming. Like it's just, and they're not going anywhere. And it'll just be, I think that we'll see a shift in how they probably operate here, and also then how much content they put out. They'll really, really start to look in at, and examine what's streaming and what people really want. And
well, they were all growing so fast that they were just, Netflix especially was just, I swear, I think there's a whole South Park episode about it where you could just like pitch anything to them and they'll say, here's $5 million, you'll make it. Like, it was to that point. And I mean, it's just like, it's not going anywhere, but like, there was a .com bubble and that burst, and like the internet didn't die, and there's a crypto bubble bursting right now. And it's that will stick around, but not a million joke things that people have been working on forever. And the same will happen with streaming. Like it'll pop and then it'll reset itself and get comfortable somewhere, because you can't grow at the rate that Netflix has been growing and sustain that. It's impossible.
Yeah, it is. And I think for audiences or consumers as well, like I wouldn't be surprised if some of the streaming platforms do merge or some don't make it long term. I could be wrong. I will never say never, but it just seems to me like that there's just, I don't see how they can be getting the traction, because it's interesting, like when something, this new 45-day window, something ends up streaming for free on Hulu, like a Fox Disney film or something, or now it's on Paramount Plus, like the new Scream or something pops up. But then I'll look on iTunes and it's number one on iTunes. So people are still buying it, on digital, versus when they could stream it on their platform if they had the platform. Peacock is free. Like you can stream Ambulance already, and The Northman on Peacock, and that's it. You can have that free. Just watch 2 commercials before the movie and it streams. But I don't know if the awareness or even just the need or interest is there for people to really have all of these apps. So we'll see.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's already starting. Like, I think Discovery is going to merge in with HBO Max at some point.
Yeah, well, the Warner Discovery merge is already happening. Right. It's in progress, and you'll see what they do with that, because HBO Max had a rough start, and I love their content, but it's just I do too. It's also something I'm noticing with streaming, which is really interesting. If you look on the top streaming stuff, like a lot of YouTubers report on what people are watching and Nielsen's and all that sort of thing, and box office and that, but like, I found it fascinating, particularly on Netflix, that an old movie, speaking of like catalog, will be number one. Like 3 weeks ago, U.S. Marshals, like the sequel to The Future, was number one across the world. Like that movie's been kind of just MIA for a long time. It's been on some streaming here and there, and then it pops up on people's Netflix, and everyone's watching it. And and it's happened with a couple of other, I can't think of them, but U.S. Marshals was the latest, still in the top 10. And I'm like, what is it about that movie that has hit all of a sudden, where everyone that has Netflix is watching it? I know that it's a great film. It's really, really well edited. Stuart Baird directed that, and but that's fascinating to me. It's just at random.
They do pop up time to time on Netflix. You log in, and the top 10 will have like some rom-com from like 2004, and you're like, how did that happen? Like, where did the algorithm just decided to recommend this to everybody, and everybody decided that was the movie for them this week? And it is so interesting. There's probably something to be learned there by what is working when you're seeing these older, like, could you replicate that with something newer? Is it the story? Is it, there's definitely something to be learned there, because there are some wacky ones.
Yeah, I think, I'm feeling that's what Top Gun Maverick is sort of done as well. It's almost done like it's gone it's not just the nostalgia grab, and it's not just Tom Cruise, although he's amazing and a terrific producer. But that film has, a friend of mine told, the broadest range of ticket sales in terms of age demographic of any movie for like a long, I think he referenced Titanic or something like that, but that's a long time. So, because when I saw it as well, it was interesting. There was like people my age with their parents who were in their like 60s, 70s, and then with their kids that were like 6, and I'm 40, and I'm like, yeah, that's interesting. I don't go to movies anymore where I see that kind of 3 generations of a family. And when I did see Titanic, that was the case. I remember I went with my grandma and my mum, like that was, and I was a kid. So I think that there's something about that movie. It doesn't have it doesn't have an agenda to it other than it just tells a story of people putting their differences aside and their past grief and trauma and kind of coming together to hit a goal. And it's inspiring. And like Titanic, it has that spectacle of real in-camera effects. They really shot a lot of those planes, and the actors did a lot of the stunts. And it's crazy. And I think that that's something for studios to learn from. It's not just about, let's just remake everything from the 80s now. It's not that. You have to do it in a way that gets people a reason to get off their butt and go buy a ticket and sit in the theater. And I think that's what Top Gun Maverick did. It just had that perfect balance of a universal story and then the spectacle that I think is needed. And your eyes can tell when it's real. And I don't have anything against CGI. CGI has revolutionized so much of the industry and what you can do. But there's something to be said when you use CGI as like the icing on the cake if you're dealing with practical effects. And it just, your eye reads it different,
Yeah. And no, that type of movie, like, oh my God, what was the other one that just came out recently that was heavy on practical effects? Now I'm drawing a blank, but you're totally right. It's just like that's a game changer. But that movie is also made, well, Tom Cruise is the last big movie star, right? He's the only one that can really draw everyone out at this point. And it's made for everybody. But it's interesting how they approach, I feel like as a marketing guy, I feel like there's a pitch meeting and somebody's like, well, we need, you pick the demographic, and it's like, yeah, 18 to 24. And that's who we're making this movie for. And we don't care if anybody else goes to see it. And there aren't many universal movies like that anymore. I assume Avatar 2 will be like that. James Cameron seems to be able to do that. He's one of the last directors that can bring everybody out.
Yeah.
Scorsese can still do it. I remember going to see The Wolf of Wall Street, and I was sitting next to like a 75-year-old couple who were horrified, but they were there. But it's Scorsese, so they're there. I'm like 20, and I'm like, Jesus, they're sitting right next to me. I'm like, I can't be here with these people. I feel bad. Like these are like my grandparents.
Yeah.
But those types of people can still bring everyone out, and it's those movies that'll keep the theaters alive, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully Cameron pulls it off, because there's so many, just cynics out there. And I'm curious to see how this whole thing goes with Avatar 2, because it's been such a long time coming. And, it's common knowledge. It is the main reason we haven't got True Lies and Abyss on physical yet.
I was going to go there.
Yeah, but that's okay. But, yeah, I'm curious to see if he can do it with it. I mean, I don't think my parents would be interested in Avatar, but they did go see Top Gun, which is interesting. So, but it's still, again, they do target this very tight windows. And I know from doing test screenings as well, when we're testing a movie, they have to get a bit of everyone in. But then I'm like, oh, there's a whole lot of like people, 18 to 28 here. Like that's what they're really going for with this movie. Or there's people over 30 and, or a heap of kids, which is a tough test screening. There's kids filling out surveys. 300 kids.
Can't imagine.
Filling out surveys. But yeah, it's an interesting, I think it's a unique time. Everything is very much in flux right now, and we'll see how it levels out now that we're still in the pandemic. Well, it's an endemic, I guess, but people are going to the movies, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, the movies are back, but then it surprises me. Like the other day, this ties back to Fox and Predator, but that new Predator movie that's set in like the, I guess, colonial America time period, and I was like, wow, what an amazing concept. Like I would love to see Predator in like medieval times and like go through all of that. But then it goes straight to Hulu, and I'm like, isn't that a movie that deserves the movie? It's Predator. That's like a keystone franchise for Fox.
You'd think so. I mean, again, this is my personal opinion. I can't speak for anyone. People that I know are still working on the 20th Century Studios side or Searchlight side of Disney now. Fox Searchlight is now Searchlight Studios. But I've noticed there's been movies popping up going straight to Hulu. Now that Death on the Nile is done, I don't think we've seen a Fox theatrical release since Death on the Nile, which was back in February, I think. I could be wrong. But from my understanding, that Disney's plan, so Fox used to do around 18 movies a year. Only a certain amount of those, that's including Searchlight, only a certain amount of those were IPs. The rest were fresh concepts, like a Bad Times at the El Royale or Bohemian Rhapsody or something like that, or something that was not IP-ish. From what I hear, I think that they're still going to put some Fox films out theatrically, like Avatar 2, obviously, and we'll probably eventually get a Deadpool 3 or those kind of big ones. But the other stuff, the smaller movies that Fox used to do, will probably just be straight to Hulu, which is sad. And I don't know how much this new Predator movie costs. I would see it theatrically. It'll be interesting to see how it does for Hulu, because they're really still pushing Hulu here. Whereas I was in Australia the start of the year, and I used Disney Plus a lot because it had that star logo on it, which is my parents had it set up because they've got nephews, and you put in a 4-digit PIN, and then it opens up all the R-rated, all the Fox content, FX Network, all that stuff, the stuff that's on Hulu now. So we're paying for two separate streaming platforms here, or you get the bundle. But outside of the US, there's a whole adult section on Disney Plus that to me makes Disney Plus more, for me, I don't want just branded content. So I was using Disney Plus a lot, and I think that it makes sense to get people to have that platform, which is what they want.
Yep.
But it's also sad because I am a Predator fan. I would like to see it on the big screen, and there's no word if they actually are going to do any theatrical release. It is being advertised as a Hulu exclusive. So
that's all I've heard. Yeah, it's just straight to streaming. But
so I think we'll see probably 2/3 of that slate, of the Fox slate, go direct to Hulu, and a third will get theatrical.
Huh. Yeah, and that does suck because they were doing a lot of original stuff, and hopefully, they'll still be able to. But I mean, if I'm a filmmaker, am I going to look towards them right now? I might be a little bit nervous of, what I'm going to get back and where my movie's going to end up, I guess, if it's going to go straight to Hulu, if I'm really set on a theater. I mean, but then you go to Warner and they're like, oh, we're going to slap it on HBO Max. You go to Paramount and they slap it on Paramount Plus. So you really can't win anywhere right now as an original. It's
interesting. Filmmaker. Yeah. It's I don't know. I've produced a feature which got distribution, but it wasn't on that large a studio scale. And can imagine what it's like. You have to have some kind of notoriety or profile, or the concept has to be deemed theatrical worthy, I guess. But I mean, I think Paramount is coming off like they're pretty filmmaker friendly. They're doing that 45-day window, but they are still putting their stuff out theatrically, like Sonic the Hedgehog and obviously Quiet Place and Scream and that. So they're doing interesting stuff. Sony doesn't even have a streaming platform, so good on them, because that's what I'd be doing. I just license the hell out of my stuff to make all these other platforms pay for my stuff instead of having to have my own and operate that. I would be like, no, pay for this. I just try and make the best content, and then just make all these other platforms just pay through the nose to get the rights for it. That's what
I would do the same thing if I had Disney's. If I was Disney and I had Fox's catalog for physical media, I'd do the same thing. I'd say, well, this is a lot of work for us in house, and we're focused on our Disney Plus thing. Let's just make a shit ton of money and license this stuff out to somebody like Arrow or Shout or Criterion who will do it. And it's like, why not?
It'll be interesting to see what happens. I mean, we're getting Heat finally, which is fantastic. Yeah. And
I think it was the fifth time I had told people a date for Heat, so I'm hoping this one's real. Yeah. That's been sitting there for a while. That master, and but yeah, we got Speed from Disney, and I think it's a shame, but I don't know. Again, like the state of like trying to launch this streaming platform and everything else they've got going on, I don't know if it's about manpower or if it is a genuine just disinterest, unless it serves like
the brand
Yeah.
machine. Like, you know, I could see them doing the Alien films at some point in 4K. Other than we've got Alien, but seeing the others. But again, it's like I have no idea. I try to just lean into the good stuff and what is happening, and there is a lot of good stuff for 4K for us right now. I mean, you know, I see stuff coming through the pipeline, and I'm just like, oh god, it's going to be an expensive fall this year, you know. And so yeah, I think to me there's enough. Yes, there is some real good stuff being kind of just held and locked away, and it's really frustrating. I mean, you know, but again, I just try and take what I can get and be appreciative for that. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, and like what Kino Lorber's doing with 4K, and now the Criterion is into 4K. They've gone full speed into it. Now I can't keep up with them either, which is like a good thing. I'd rather not be able to keep up with you than to be sitting there waiting and like, oh, okay, every 6 months we get one.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone's on board now. It feels like.
I'm trying to curate as well. I have a curated collection because I did go a little bit overboard at the start of the pandemic, and some movies started disappearing, and I'd given away Fox titles that I'd worked on to people just as gifts, because it's like that thing when you're in it, like there's always going to be more. And then it's like, oh, where's my copy of, gave it to Damien. I got to buy it again. Like, because we'd get gifts. We get these gift boxes of the titles we worked on. And I'm like, well, here, neighbor, take this Ice Age, and he just sees it a Family Guy or whatever. And then I kind of went on a little bit of a rampage and bought some titles, and then I'm like, my collection kind of doubled in size, and now I'm like, okay, now I'm just gonna look for the curated stuff. And I mean, some stuff, even if I think that it's got a really good Blu-ray transfer, unless I really love the movie, I'm not going to do the 4K upgrade. Like Heat, I will, but sometimes it's just you know, and we're all different. You got to pick and choose. So,
and I did the same thing. I went like, and it's probably part of just like being cooped up. And then like I wasn't commuting to work. I wasn't eating lunch at work every day and buying lunch. I was like, oh, disposable income. Like, this is what it's like to have that. And I went crazy buying movies too. And everybody was pushing online sales at the time. And I went really hard. And I actually today, I just shipped off about 200-ish from my collection to another collector. I sold them to him in bulk for like $1 or $2 a piece, and this guy's going to get a great kickstart to his collection with 200 Blu-ray, 4K. Some of it was like duplicates, like I upgraded and hadn't gotten rid of the Blu-ray, but some of it was like you said, like I looked at it and I said, am I ever going to watch this again? Have I watched this period? If I haven't, I really don't need it at this point. And if I did, will I watch it again? Some of them had digital codes, so I redeemed those and said, if I ever want to get it, at least I'll have, you know, until that digital service shuts down, at least it's there. Worst case, I'll find it on streaming, but it's not a movie I feel like I had to have. So I actually just purged, like I sold those off, and then I purged a couple hundred more, and I'm doing a huge like reorganization and curation of the collection, which has actually been healthy. Like I feel better. Yeah. I feel better. It's like
spring cleaning, man. It's good to you actually do. It's like I don't have any. I like my collections and stuff, but I don't have hoarding tendencies. But I also just like when I do that, and especially if I give it away to people that appreciate it, or I sell it or whatever. It's like, no, they're going to get much more use out of that. I always feel really good, and then you also free up some space. And I don't like clutter, so it's good to, you know, but. It's hard. Like I went through my collection. I thought, I wouldn't watch that again, but I know the disc is discontinued, so I'm going to keep it. And you know, so
that's true. I was doing that too.
It's hard. Like I did. There was a lot of Fox catalog stuff that got you know, pulled, and I had to import a couple from even Japan because I really wanted the movies. And you know, and my department also serviced the international SKUs. It's a different disc, but like. You know, but it's the same disc, same transfer. You just switch the menus over to English and it plays. It's great. And so I had to do that as well because I'm like, no, there's no way Disney's going to put this movie out again. So I picked that up. That was part of my spending spree in 2020.
Yeah, I was taking note of anything that was Fox for that reason, and just taking a quick peek, like, where is it available? Is it still widely available or not? And then I was doing the same with MGM because I don't know what their future is going to look like. It feels like they do a good job licensing, but that was all. I mean, when those deals run out, is Amazon going to re-up them? I mean, I don't know. So I was holding on to a lot of those too.
Do you know who made the No Time to Die disc? Because I know that was actually an MGM film. I don't know who. I've got the disc, but I forgot to check like who actually look at the back to see in the fine print who cut that disc. But
I feel like it. I don't have it anymore because I bought the Daniel Craig. That was one. Actually, that was in the box that I just sold to this guy because I bought the whole Daniel Craig set. But it should be on there too. I have to look. It's a good question because that happened right in the middle of it all.
Yeah, we did at Fox. Guy that sat behind me, also named Adam. He did the 4Ks of the Daniel Craig movies, not before No Time to Die, but the others. Yeah. He did that right before we left, and so I know I've got a lot of friends actually at Amazon now, and I know they just had a big welcome thing, event for MGM people. I should find out, but who knows? Yeah.
I'm hopeful because I think about. I mean, Amazon's a retailer, so it's like they've got to be the number one retailer of physical media in the world. So, I mean, it doesn't do them any good to pull the stuff off of Amazon, or to pull it off the shelves. I mean, they're printing money.
It's a revenue stream. It makes sense. Yeah. I mean, who knows where they are in terms of setting up shop there or what deals they've got. I have no idea. I mean, they could even set up a deal with a Kino or something like that to take on their titles. Or I don't know. It's interesting. It's kind of like the Wild Wild West right now, and you just got to go with the flow and
if I'm Amazon, I'm like, well, okay, I got this movie. I license it to Kino. I get paid. Kino makes the disc, puts it on Amazon. I get paid again. Like, yeah, I can
that's
double
true.
Up. Everything we license is coming back to us to be sold and make revenue off of. So it's a double whammy. I mean, I can't imagine they would. That seems like it's too good to be true from a business standpoint. Let somebody else do all the work and then still sell the item.
100%. I mean, it's like I tell people as well, like, physical media or discs for movies anyway, still, multi-billion-dollar industry a year. And then you've got like vinyl and CDs and that having like a kind of a renaissance now, which is great. Even with Gen Zs are getting into them, which I find fascinating. But so it's not going anywhere. And that's the thing that I think, well, from a standpoint of hopefully thinking logically that like it's a revenue stream, why wouldn't you do it? But a big part of it I think is manpower, and the thing I like working on digital versus discs, and that discs it's an object. It has to go through manufacturing. There's a lot more time involved, and digital, it just seems like we're just moving assets about, you know what I mean? Like, here in Coda, check this, and here's the trailer, and then like, yep, great, push that to iTunes. That's that kind of vibe. It just feels very, and then I'll look at my TV like, oh, there it is on iTunes. That's great. Like, but then when it's this thing, it does take more effort. There are more moving parts. You got printing for the actual slip. You've got, the replication of the discs. You've got actually making the disc itself. There's more vendors involved to create the actual final product. So it is more costly, but again, they still, unless there's a recall, they do turn a profit. So
that's what I was going to say. These recalls that keep happening, I know it's a pain for collectors and people who want the discs, but I'm also just like, secondarily, I'm like, this sucks because every time that happens, someone's taking a huge hit at their bottom line, and it's going to make them less likely to take a risk in the future or to do something.
To break even on it. It's kind of like a write-off because it's a huge, it's very costly. And like, there's been a lot of talk. I think I do peruse, like, obviously your channel and YouTubers, and I don't comment, but I look at message boards and see what people are writing about. And, there definitely has been an increase in terms of these recalls. And, again, my opinion and my experience in working in it is just that, and not everyone has to agree with me, but it's like people are working really, really hard on this stuff. They're not overrun per se, but I just think the last 2 years have been extremely challenging for people with whether you want to talk about from the pandemic, politically, socially, financially. People are under a lot of pressure. There's been a lot of change. I mean, look at I cannot believe the level of change in my life in the last 2 years, from not only just Fox and jobs, but the amount of deaths, pandemic, missing this, getting married with only 3 people at my wedding, and things like that. There's just been so much, unrest, and like I think it bleeds into your work, into your day, and
it does,
QC out of any actually I won't say that, that's not true, but out of the process, QC is like you have to have an extreme attention to detail, and these QC techs are reviewing stuff over and over and over, and it's surprising to me that it happens and that it makes it past a second pass or a third QC pass, or someone at the distributor doesn't pick it up and they're reviewing the disc. But again, I think it's just a reflection of the state of the world right now, which is kind of messed up. And when there is a recall, I just, I do the recalls paperwork, and I feel bad that it's going to cost them money. I don't get upset about this stuff anymore because, life's too short. There's just more important things, and it's very lucky to be able to say I have the bandwidth and the time and freedom in my life to collect movies. So I just, with love, get my recall, my new disc, my replacement disc, and move on. So, but it is.
They tend to do a pretty good job. I mean, it's not the fastest thing in the world. I know people expect. I get messages all the time like, "Do you get the replacement disc for this?" And I'm like, "Well, they put it out 3 weeks ago, so like, it's not going to happen that quickly. It's a huge process. I mean, they have to correct the issue first, then you've got to go and actually manufacture everything."
Because they have process. You're talking about pulling stuff off shelves, pulling it from Amazon warehouses. Everything has to be recalled. The packages have to be opened. I think that the way it's done is that the people that have already purchased and submitted a recall request get the discs first. But then in the interim, all those other prepackaged sets that haven't sold get opened. The discs have to be replaced, repackaged, then resent it. Like, that's a lot. And, so... Yeah, but it's been I think I got the Donnie Darko disc, which got recalled. I had that player issue with that disc, and new disc is great. So
well, and it's hard with all the technology too. I mean, 4K period is not. There's still issues with like certain game consoles. Like I think the Xbox can't play like 100 gig discs well, and there's just issues with older players from 4 or 5 years ago that haven't been updated, and they're having issues with newer discs or the larger files. And I mean, it's just like not even after it's been like 7 years, but it's not like super perfected as a format yet. It was almost like a little bit ahead of where the equipment to play it was. Like, we had the capability to make these discs, but the equipment and the technology to play it in your home is like still kind of getting better and being improved on. So it was a little bit ahead of the curve where, I mean, it was weird because those 4K discs came out, like, I think even before most players launched. Like, it was very early, it felt.
I think the first Fox one, people can correct me if I'm wrong. Please just tweet to me if I'm wrong. I think it was The Martian. I remember they used that as a presentational disc for us at Fox, and I'd just seen The Martian at the Zanuck, and then we saw I remember at the time, because I just didn't think that it was like whatever. Like, I didn't think that it wasn't until I saw some older movies in 4K that I really kind of was like, oh, this is great. So it probably was like 2016, I think 2017-ish, 2016. But yeah, there's the player issues. That is frustrating. Because again, as you're right, that's the player technology as well, not keeping up with how the discs are made. So I didn't know that about Xbox. I didn't know that about Xbox. I didn't know that.
I think that's what it is. People have told me that they have issues. I mean, there's still a lot of discs that are 66 gig discs, but the 100 gig discs, the bigger files, one version of the Xbox has issues. You like can't play the disc well, or it'll skip. I mean, I've had my own issues here lately where like I'm losing signal for a few seconds at a time, and I figured out why. It was some settings in my player, but like that took me going onto forums and asking several other people like what's going on, because I switched cables. I went straight to the TV. I was like, this is still happening. The technology is not working well. So what's going on? Like, it should be easier. And there was like deep into advanced settings, something in a color space I had to change, and that fixed it, which is insane because default out of the box, most people wouldn't know to do that, and they'd return it and say it's broken.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know,
I think
it creates a barrier to entry for some people, I think.
Yep. The UHD 100 issue is, I think, potentially why some distributors are reluctant to use that disc. I think because of the fact that it just involves more customer complaints, and not going to say who, but there's, you know, some are more adverse to that. They don't want to have to deal with that. That's, again, like a time management thing. It's a time suck. It's costly. So they will do their best to try and get it on a UHD 100. And I've encountered both, UHD 66. I've encountered both, and then others, distributors do not give a crap. Like if the movie needs to go on a UHD 100 to look the best, it's what they're going to pay for, and they're going to do it. So, I didn't know that about those discs. So that's interesting.
Yeah, which it does explain. I think most of Disney's are 66, and I mean it makes sense if I'm printing. You know, my God, Guardians of the Galaxy 3, which is going to sell God knows how many copies compared to Donnie Darko from Arrow Video. Popular movie, but boutique, priced as a boutique collectible item, like not going to do the numbers that Guardians will do. I'd want to make sure that the disc isn't having any issues, because that's a massive 100%. Recall.
Yeah, I think that's what collectors need to think as well. I think, you know, we're kind of becoming lazy with our critical thinking skills these days, including myself. But just I think part of that's just only a certain amount of characters on Twitter and that sort of thing. It's hard to kind of get your point across or think with any kind of nuance and that sort of thing. So, I try to think. I think, you know, you have to look at it from the business perspective as well. And so, UHD 66, just you have to deal with it or not buy it.
Yeah, no, and I mean, for the most part, they look all right. I think there's sure if you've got that eye and you're zooming in on your TV and you're like, okay, nope, that's a little bit compressed there. It's like, okay, but the 99% again are not. They don't know that there's a 66 versus 100, and they're certainly not going to tell the difference between the two.
Yep. Yeah, it's the crushing of the blacks that I notice the most, especially when I get up to, you know, get a drink or something and walk past the TV and it's paused or it's still playing, and I walk past it and I'm really close and I'm just like, ugh. It's usually streaming most of the time versus a disc.
The biggest
like
problem.
I was watching Strange New Worlds last night on Paramount Plus, and I was like, God, it's not a good stream tonight. It's not like, you know, we can't pay any extra for our Wi-Fi. It's like it's the best it can be, and I'm just like, well, this is not. Doesn't look
right,
good.
And you're totally reliant on, like, for me it's Xfinity, and it's like, well, how are their servers doing today? And I'm hardwired, my TV's hardwired, it's right next to the router. I mean, it doesn't matter. Sometimes I get a great stream, and then sometimes I'm, you know, trying to watch. I remember the worst one ever was watching Game of Thrones in that last season.
Oh God, was that the episode that the one at night when it was the battle? And, oh my God,
I literally shut it off. I said, I can't do this right now. I'm going to have to just stay off the internet and avoid spoilers, because the bandwidth is not here and I can't see a damn thing. It looks worse than DVD. Like, it was terrible. I
feel like that movie, it was shot like a film. And we had people over, we did Game of Thrones nights, and I just remember looking at it. I was just like, this looks like rubbish. It wasn't. I couldn't even focus on the story, because all I just saw was that the crushing of all the blacks. It was so, and especially when it was supposed to be so eerie, and it just didn't work. It actually killed it. It
did. On the disc, it looks incredible on the 4K disc that I have. I mean, I got the set, and that was the first thing I said was, I'm going to that episode, and this is going to tell me whether or not they did a good job or they, you know, half-assed it. It's unbelievable night and day to watch that on the disc. So that's usually my biggest complaint about the streaming is the dark. Like, I can't watch like the Batman on a streaming service. It's too dark. It's those blacks always that 4K just kills. You just can't beat it.
There's just such a richness to it. And I just did a essay on, because it was an anniversary yesterday for Batman Forever, and just, again, say what you want about the film, but just that transfer, watching that movie in 4K, just the color awesome. In that film, and just everything just looks so chic and slick. And I like it was like the movie just, I was like, this looks, I don't know, like it's just different to how I remember it. I just like, I know it was colorful, but this is just like, wow. And that's the exciting part about it. It's great when a disc comes in. You know, sometimes it's like, I'm glad I've got this, but sometimes I really can't wait to put it in to see what they've done with it. If it's a one of your favorite films, and most of the time it's impressive. So
it is, yeah. I mean, it's very rare that I have to give not have to give, but that I give a bad review or say like I wasn't super impressed with this. There's a few where I say, yeah, you know what, you could buy this on Blu-ray or 4K. It's going to be good either way, or if you don't want to spend the money, don't spend the money. But there are very few where I'm like, just skip this completely, because just the HDR, the color, regardless of everything else, the benefits, but the color is just unbelievable on those discs. That's constantly what blows me away.
Yeah. That's how you win people over, guys, for everyone listening. It's just to blow people away with your reference discs, and you can make some collector friends that way. That's why I've done it. So,
yep.
Yeah.
So before we've been over an hour. Before I let you go, though, I do want to talk. Wow. I know it flies. See, this is what happens when you get too nerds.
I don't get to talk to anyone about this stuff, and
neither do I.
So
except for these podcasts.
Yeah, even people I work with, we don't really talk about it. We just we don't.
Yeah.
So yeah,
well, it's work, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't want to talk about it. We're at work all day. I totally get that. But I did want to ask, like, so Heat was hanging around for a while, and we knew that had a 4K scan because I have the Blu-ray that was the 4K transfer. It's right next to me right now. What else is there that we know about that is public that you could actually share? Because I know you can't share all of it, but I know that there's got to be some that have been released or are on Disney Plus that could come to 4K disc. Well,
yes.
Tread carefully.
Yeah, I have seen the vaults, and it kind of feels like I've got like government information. But like to be fair, I don't know what has been worked on post Fox. I know it was in progress. Home Alone 2: Lost in New York is on Disney Plus in 4K. That was in progress when in 2020, and so I can say that it's on their streaming platform. It has been on social media, I think, from the person that worked on it. Obviously, we've seen Abyss. That was when I was at Fox. That Instagram post popped up. Someone in the facility that was working on it.
2016.
So you saw that post too? Because I don't remember who it was. It was
his setup, right?
Yeah. So it's
that
public.
Was 20. That was 6 years ago. That post hit.
Yeah. Look, there's a ton of restorations. Some are just a 2K restoration because 4K wasn't done. But like even the 2K scan, you could do a new Blu-ray release similar to what like. You could still do a Blu-ray of this new scan, because it's like you look at the Blu-ray discs that have like the new transfer on it, like the Batman films, for example, the 90s ones, and that like you put in your previous Blu-ray or the new one that comes with a 4K disc, you could still tell it's the new transfer. It just looks amazing.
Right.
So we did have a screening of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid at Fox. It was like one night that we all got to go and watch. That was a new transfer. And the first time I'd ever seen the film was one of those films that I just missed. And my mum loved it growing up, and I just knew it was such an iconic film. We never watched it in film studies at school, and so I got to see that. But that's Home Alone 2, Abyss. Obviously everyone knows that everybody would like to release True Lies, whether it's Disney or Fox wants to release True Lies. Like I'm sure everyone would. I'm sure Sony would take it. Like it's just right. And both Abyss and True Lies would come up at least once a year when I was at Fox, and we'd cut a budget and we wouldn't announce it obviously because I'm sure that the powers that be in marketing are in touch with Lightstorm, and it's like, oh, he's got some downtime. James Cameron can review this, and so let's cut a budget, let's get it because we've got this window, and then we can get this thing out, and then it would just go away. And and it was interesting with our first year with Disney as well, when we're all still like Fox, working the Fox workflow and that, and we're all still together. Disney hadn't really come into our department yet, but we did another budget for True Lies, and and I don't remember if it was in 4K and Blu-ray. I don't remember, but
we'll take either one at this point.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but and there's a whole bunch of other stuff because it's I can't say there's just there's stuff and I'm glad we got. I thought Speed was a phenomenal transfer. I was really impressed with that. And they did a screening of that at Fox when I worked there, and took a little while to get it out, but it did, and it looks, they just, I don't know, they knocked it out of the park. It just it was great. So I have no words,
that one's night and day.
Yeah,
but I guess that's why I was curious, because I remember, I think you were one of the people that tweeted about, hey, I just saw Speed in 4K on the Fox lot, and then everyone was like, okay, so where is it? And then it was like, it was 5 years later that we got it. So that's why I was curious, I guess, Butch Cassidy, if there were any others like that were publicly known that was transferred.
That's about all I can say, man. I'm sorry, but I get it. Like, even, I mean, when it was announced that Disney was going to take over Fox, before they even got in there, you know, every department's going to get vetted, and that just happens. And so they want to make sure that they're showing a profit. And, you know, so we after we did the Predator trilogy, we kind of put a button on the 4K catalogs for a while. And until they figured out what was going to go on, what the budgets were going to be for each department, all that sort of thing. And it sucked, because I loved working on those. I was, you know, grateful that when I did move to Disney that I got to work on Home Alone. We'll have to see what they do. But there is stuff in there. And I mean, you know, Paramount's done the same thing. There's I saw a whole bunch of Paramount titles in 4K in Australia on one of their streaming platforms called Stan. And Stan it's called. And I was like, I was going through and then I was Googling 4K movies available on Stan, and I was like, oh my God, there was a whole heap of, you know, Paramount stuff available in Australia, and I'm sure probably other parts of the world. I didn't know that. So, but yeah, I will say, well, I'd love to, you know, because it's public, Home Alone 2 and Abyss, and but we'll have to see. True Lies, hopefully.
Yeah.
It's just pinning down James Cameron and chaining him to a chair. And
that's true, right? Because I've been told that, and I always say that, but this is confirmation. It's like, those are not coming out unless he 100% green lights them.
Yeah, there's a lot of filmmakers that have that deal in there.
I've heard David Fincher does too.
Yeah, of course. Anyone that is like a visualist like that, or that has that, you know, Scorsese and another one. And Coppola's working. You've had Coppola's guy on his on your channel here. He's great. They're doing amazing stuff, and they see the value in it. And you know, and Fox is very filmmaker friendly. I do know Chris Columbus supervised both the Home Alone transfers. I know Jan de Bont supervised Speed, and Ridley Scott supervised Alien. I don't know about all the Predators. I don't remember. But, you know, we even had directors come in to record a commentary for the new release films, whether the film flopped at the box office or not. They were like, no, come in and do a commentary. And so that, you know, I think it makes sense to have the director or the DP at least. I know Jan de Bont's doing flatliners for Arrow since Joel Schumacher's passed away, and you know, Jan de Bont shot that film. He was a cinematographer before he was a director, and that's going to hopefully look great. Mm-hmm. But I think having filmmaker involvement, because even as you've talked about before, like with the HDR, it's not essentially how it was shot, right? So I want at least their stamp on it. You know, Barry Sonnenfeld did a fantastic job with the Addams Family last year, and that movie awesome. Was at that perfect cusp, kind of like Burton's Batman films, in that where everything was still practical. The sets were practical, the texture on the sets, and just the costumes and the makeup, everything in that film. There was no green. It was a couple of green screen shots, but most of it just. That film just like looked incredible in 4K, and you could tell like he just locked himself away in the pandemic and worked on one of his first movie actually. So it is important though, and you're right. And I think the HDR is the big one, because it's it is a revisionist version a little bit, because but it is. I always picture it as like, okay, this is how director XYZ would have wanted this to look if he had the technology to do it. And this is what was in his head, couldn't make it happen at the time, is now able to make it happen hopefully without overdoing it and, you know, drastically changing the look and feel. I want to see I do want to see the film grain. Obviously, depending on the film stock, some transfers are grainier than others. You know, I think Ghostbusters and the first Predator come to mind, but to me, they still look incredible. You know, and others have more of a finer grain like Speed. But I do want it to look like, to me, it should look like a pristine film print, you know, without any of the scratches, and look like, you know, that's how I want it to look, like a film print if it's shot on film.
Yeah.
So
as good as it can, depending on, you know, how it was shot too. Like you said, like Predator, I just reviewed True Romance, which is like, it's pretty grainy. Like but that's also was a stylistic choice that Tony Scott makes with his movies. And it's not as bad as like A Man on Fire. That's very stylistic, but I mean, it still has that. And I get in arguments with people because I say Predator is like one of the best 4K restorations, and I loved it because if you looked at the Blu-ray release, that was rough.
It's kind of like Arnie looked like a Madame Tussauds kind of wax figure. It's like everyone had, you know, the plants in the jungle looked plastic-like, and Arnie's sweaty biceps look like rubber. Just like,
right. You know, like it's like, and if you take that and you want to take it and compare it to No Time to Die, then you're going to be like, yeah, this isn't a good 4K disc. But like, that's not the context that you should ever be. It's apples to oranges. You can't ever compare that. So I always try to score it. It's within the context of that movie's history and source, and then we can play it against, you know, others of a similar caliber. But I cannot compare Mission Impossible, Rogue Nation to The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance.
Yeah, it's good. This is what I'm talking about. It's at the level of critical thinking, you know, you can apply. Like, it's not rocket science, but yeah, in the context of what you're dealing with and the era that it was shot and that it was made, that's what you have to think about. It's not about making it look like it was shot in 2022.
Right.
Like, that's not the point. It should be the
best that movie has ever looked, yes, but not the best movie you've ever seen look on your home theater. That's not a reality. And I think a lot of people get it. I've been preaching it, but a lot of people still don't get it. And they'll be like, I'm not buying that movie. It's got too much grain. It's like, well, then I guess you're just never going to watch that movie or anything from like pre-2010 because they all have grain.
100%. Yeah, it's interesting because I think these restorations, we're talking about practical effects earlier, and even just like Adam's Family, that there's definitely an era of films when the technology for practical was so high, and they really well. Yeah, I haven't seen that. I actually haven't seen Jurassic Park in 4K. I haven't gone back and watched it. But
it's
I've heard. It's like there's something about those when they're done really well. Like Speed is one as well. Practical effects. They shot that movie around LA, crashed cars and everything like that. It just lends itself that era of filmmaking because it's tactile, and the CG. A lot of the older CG from like late 90s doesn't transfer to 4K that well. It can look pretty rough. So, you know, it's that's kind of like a niche little era, and obviously then going way back in like era of Hitchcock and that, they can look amazing too. And movies like Red Shoes, which you covered too, and
yeah, that was unbelievable. Vertigo is unbelievable. Like those movies, it's crazy because they do look like they could have been shot yesterday. I mean, obviously you can tell they weren't because they all still have the old Hollywood accent, and they're definitely like, it's an old school Hollywood movie. But you're like, man, if you told me somebody was just making like a 60s period piece and they shot this last week, I mean, they're at that level, which is awesome.
Yeah, it's what I love about it. I think that's why everyone listening loves this stuff, because it's I call it like transformative. It's like a way to rediscover something that you think you know. And I mean, I loved. Like let's talk about Batman Forever, that and Batman Returns and Adam's Family, Back to the Futures, and that they looked so good. I was so happy with those, and
I like watching them for the first time again.
Yeah, I mean, I like a lot of the more indie or foreign language stuff, even the stuff that Criterion puts out a lot. But in terms of like some of my mainstream popcorn movies that I grew up watching and that still hold up today as an adult, as a grown man, I can still like this stuff. It's great to see them and look so good. So
yeah. No, totally agree. And so if you're listening and you're still on the fence, if you're still one of those who's like, show me No Time to Die, show me Mission Impossible, show me the Avengers, or, you know, don't show me anything, I gotta tell you, you're missing out on. I guess I don't know why you upgraded everything to 4K if you're not going to go back and look at those older movies, because that for me is the selling point. The new stuff's great, looks cool. It's gonna look cool on pretty much any display you put it on. So you got to go back and check out this older stuff. It is unbelievable, and I can't recommend it enough.
100%. A lot more movies than when I was young for people to go back and study now for the younger generation. I can't imagine doing film studies at uni now because you've got like another 2 decades of movies. So
I mean, there's 100 years of movies now, at least. I mean, 110, 115 years of movies. It's an insane run. And then every day there's more movies than there have ever been. So I do like seeing more younger collectors, though. I've been noticing. I've been getting Instagram messages, TikTok comments, and they're always like, nobody my age collects. And I'm like, well, let me tell you about like the 50 messages I've gotten last week from people who are 15 to 18 who are like, I have nobody to talk to about this. I'm like, come online, because there's plenty of us. There are dozens of us.
Yeah. Start a YouTube channel for the Gen Ys, and
Seriously.
their TikTok accounts happening, and just start plugging it. So,
I mean, it's not rocket science. I'm not doing anything special. I got a phone here. I'm sitting in front of my phone recording myself. I mean, it's people are interested. And if you're interested in show enthusiasm, you can do it. So I would encourage anybody to do it. The more people talking about it, the better. So that's why, the stuff you're doing at the Academy, writing articles about these and bringing more awareness to them is great. And the other articles you've written in the past, that one on physical media, I'll probably, I'll throw it down in the link of this podcast, because that's a really good one too. I like that article a lot. So
thanks, Jeff. Thank you. And thank you, because I think I discovered your channel a whiles back. I remember actually at Fox, I was sitting at my desk, and because I would just want to look at what people were saying about our discs, especially ones that I worked on. I can't remember which one you reviewed.
I hope I was nice.
Yeah, I mean, you're always genuine. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I don't, even when something is disappointing, that's the thing. You don't have that venom. There's no nastiness. It's just like, it's an honest critique. And
no, I can't get that mad about it. It's a movie at the end of the day. Like,
you're great. And thank you for doing the podcast and your channel, because I think there's still a lot of us. There are still a lot of, we're not like a completely dying breed. And like you said, there's newer people coming to the table as well. It's more of a niche thing now, but we love it. And that's cool. So,
yeah, well, no, I appreciate you coming on here too. It's been cool to, I've gotten to talk to some really cool people who have inside looks at all this stuff that I've gotten passionate about, and I've learned a lot. And certainly with all your experience, there's a lot to learn there. I could have talked to you for another 2 or 3 hours probably about everything going on.
Yeah, I feel like if it's Friday, it's it's go get a beer or something,
Right. Seriously. But it's cool to just hear about like the inner workings at Fox, and how that all played out. And I do have hope. I still have hope that stuff's going to get released. And I think there's still, Disney has to see the value. They were the kings of VHS. They were the kings of DVD. I mean, that's where they got a whole generation of people attached to them, when they really didn't have a great run in the 80s, and they didn't have a great run in the early 2000s, but they had classics on VHS and DVD that kept a new generation of fans involved in Disney. So,
yep.
I mean,
they even had their movie club as well. Like I had to fish out someone in LA that was a club member to get me some of their movies that I wanted to. It's like, I want that Return to Oz disc. It's like, that movie traumatized me as a kid. Now I love it. It's so good. And it's like, when they released it, I was like, how do I get this? And it's like, what is this? What's this club business? Like, so
I did the same thing. There's a guy who lives by me who he has a YouTube channel actually too, Joe Martinez, and he's in the Disney Movie Club. And I bought like 15 discs off him a few months back. I got like Jungle the Jungle and Parent Trap, and like all these ones that I like grew up on, that I was like, I need all the Mighty Ducks movies. It'd be nice if they made those available everywhere, but hey, at least they're somewhere. They're on a disc somewhere. You can
get them on eBay, and someone's upselling them. But
yeah, I know.
Or find a friend. Find a friend.
That's
like
the way
I did.
to do
it. Took a few months,
or just sign up, because I've done it 3 times, and you can keep signing up. And the initial sign up deal, it's not
pretty
bad.
good, is it? Okay.
If you get a promo code from somebody who's a member, if I remember correctly, and this was before 4K, and I think you can get 4K discs now, it was like buy one movie at full price and then get 5 for $1 each.
Oh my God.
So your first order is like $30 for 6 movies, and then you have to, over the next 2 years, you have to buy 3 of their commitment titles each month, which are sold at like $24.99, like MSRP basically.
Okay.
So when you think about it, that's $75, $60. You spend about $130, but you're going to get 10 to 12 Disney discs. I mean, it's like $10 a piece.
It's pretty good.
you can't beat that
Yeah.
especially for the exclusives, which I think are part of that deal. So
Yeah.
signing up isn't bad too. And then you cancel it and then you can do it again. I don't know if they encourage that, but I did it like 3 times and nobody ever stopped me. So
I'll note that instead of contacting my friend, she'll appreciate me not asking for 4 copies of the same movie.
It's worth doing it once. Yeah, I mean, I thought it was. I bulked up basically all my Disney and Pixar Blu-rays came from Disney Movie Club that I just did 3 times, and just each time just bulked up on the latest, even Marvel stuff. Marvel and Star Wars is in there now. You can get all that stuff.
Okay, yeah. I didn't even know it was still going. I'll check it out.
Oh yeah. You got to ask your friend who's a member. You get a code, and then they give you a promo code, and you get like extra versus I think the base level deal is like 4 movies for $1, and if you get a member to refer you get like 5 or 6 movies for $1, and you get extra stuff. So there you go, a little pro tip for everyone out there listening.
Nice. Okay, I'm gonna do some research. Thank you.
Find a friend. Actually, they're on forums and all over the place too. You can find codes, so wherever you go. But I would say it's worth doing at least once.
For sure. Totally.
That's my one Disney advertisement. Now I'll send them an invoice later. I'm sure they'll respond.
Like, where this influx of members come from? What's like?
I'm probably on a blacklist somewhere. But
who knows if they have that? I don't know.
No, they've still been pretty nice to me when I asked them questions like The Abyss, and they answered me and they said, "Yeah, that's going to come out later this year with Avatar 2." I mean, they were pretty. It's not official, but they were like, "Yeah, it's probably going to happen. James Cameron will do it."
Did you reply back and say, "What about True Lies?" You just keep that email chain going,
I replied back and said, "Can you tell me anything else?" I included True, and they were like, "Nothing at this time is in the works," which doesn't mean that nothing's in the works, but it means they're not going to tell me anything more.
Yeah, that's fair enough. There's a lot of moving parts, so you never know. But yeah.
No, I'd hate to be the guy who blows something up, because you know what? That can happen if you leak something early. I've seen that happen, and people get information and then it blows things up, and then I swear sometimes stuff gets canceled because they didn't like the way that it was announced or released.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm very cautious of that.
Yeah, it's it's a serious business in that, because you're also dealing with talent as well, and sometimes there's things called residual checks that actors get, and so do producers and directors and things like that. So when you're moving something onto a new format, sorry, we're going over time here, but moving something onto a new format, that has to be taken into account. And sometimes they do want to do it. There's plans to do it. They're working on it, but deals aren't all signed off yet. And then if you see an explosion of interest on social media or some random blog somewhere, that might make some talent ask for more money, and that therefore deems the release unprofitable.
Right.
And then it just gets shut. It could get shut. It could. I'm not saying that's happened, but it could get shut down. I'm not going to disclose anything, but that's a real thing. And I've noted even with like behind the scenes content at Fox with deleted scenes or outtakes, every single actor or anyone of the crew that are in those scenes or that outtake needs to sign off on it. And some talent, has to go through their reps, and that they might not, that outtake might make them look stupid. Some outtakes, is it funny, or do they look, like they're a klutz? And that's the same thing with deleted scenes. Sometimes those scenes are for a reason. They're taken out, and it's not always about timing. Sometimes it's for other reasons. So, and then if you're going to reformat a film and re-release it, that has to be taken into account. So they announce things as soon as they know it's a go and it's got a 100% green light. And announcing earlier is not a good idea.
It's pretty much why I stay away from it, to be honest, because there are rumors, and I hear things, and I have people say things, or I see like somebody the other day on a Facebook group. One of the guys was doing a commentary, I think, for Halloween 6. And he kind of like leaked that somebody was like, "Oh, is it getting a 4K?" And he was like, "Oh, wait and see." It was like a smiley face. And it was like, and this is a guy working on it, but I'm like, I'm not even going to post that because it's not official. And I honestly don't want to drive more attention to it until it is, in fear of them canceling it, because I really would like that to happen. So it almost happened with the first 5 Halloweens from Scream Factory is, from what I heard, like John Carpenter and his team were pissed that they did not get to make that announcement with one of the record companies they work with to release his stuff, because it was that big limited edition set with the single in it. And somebody leaked it, and it got out there and it got all the buzz, and they missed their announcement, and it almost fell apart because of that. So I don't play. Everyone always asks me, and I'm like, I'm just not. When I get an official press release, or like somebody tells me and then says I can share, I will share. Until then, I'm going to keep them to myself, because the last thing I want to do is be the guy who blows something up and ruins it for everyone else.
Yeah, and 2 months notice is whatever notice they give is always, to me, enough. I mean, I'm not privy. I know some stuff that's coming down the pipeline, but it does, for me, even just personally, whether I learn it 6 months in advance, it just makes waiting for it longer. I just so I'm like, I don't,
right.
It's
like, not going to change anything.
Yeah. So yeah,
it could only change things for the worse if that stuff comes out. Like, I don't see any benefit to it. If you're giving people 2 months to pre-order and get ready for it, like, you can still generate plenty of excitement. There's no need to leak things, and I stay away from all that. Just not my game.
I mean, you're sticking to the business of it and covering what actually exists and what's come out, and that's what's awesome. So
yeah, and I don't want to ruin relationships, so that someday if I want to have the guy from Disney on a podcast or something, he's not like, oh, you're the asshole who blew up the release of The Abyss because you announced it early. I just don't want to. I'm not going to be that guy. I don't want to burn any bridges.
It's like answering your question. We do have a blacklist, and you're on it. That's what he'd say.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I know I'm not Mickey Mouse's favorite guy, but like, it's fair criticism that I try to give. I try not to be overly just like hateful, because I watch Obi-Wan Kenobi and I've watched every episode, and I watch Disney Plus all the time, and I love Disney. Like, I don't hate Disney. I'm just being critical of some of the things that have been happening lately. So I think there's that. People always like, you hate Disney, and I'm like, I don't hate Disney. I just don't love some of the decisions they're making sometimes, and that's fair, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain films that I would love, 100%, and I want them. Some of them even Fox didn't put out on Blu-ray, and I'm not gonna. There's a couple of titles I'm like, even when I was at Fox, I was like, can we please do this on Blu-ray? It's like, I know, and they're just like, no, and I'm like, but why? And I was like, and I'll be like, oh look, right. Someone mentioned it on. It wasn't me, but like someone's like tweeting about it. Someone's this, and this is when Blu-ray was really still a thing, and it's like, no. And I'm like, they wouldn't tell me why. And I know that there's an HD transfer, and it's just like,
right.
and now I'm just like, I'm still like, in terms of filling in my collection and my curated collection, there's like just 2 movies I want on Blu-ray, and I'll be happy. I do want more on 4K, obviously, but like in terms of just like some old classics, I'm like, put it on Blu-ray, someone, damn it, like it's just like, if they won't do it. So, and I worked there, and I was like,
that's where my criticism, that's where it comes from. When I'm sitting here and I know that you guys have heat, and it's sitting there and it's ready to go, and it's like, just give it. Why are you not giving it to us? Why are you not giving us Home Alone 2? Like, why are you not giving us The Abyss? It's been 6 years. Those are the ones that I'm like, what is the wait? And that's where I get frustrated. And
Home Alone 2 is having what year is this? I think 92 was it 93 Home Alone 2? I think it was 92. So if they wanted to do a 30th anniversary release, I think it was 2 years after the first one. So 2020 was Home Alone. Yeah, so maybe Disney will, closer to Christmas, will give us Home Alone 2 in 4K.
Home Alone 2 was 92.
Yeah, Christmas night. I remember seeing that movie. Yep.
That was the year I was born.
Yep. 92 was a good year for movies.
I remember, because we used to go to a movie theater for my birthdays, and they'd give you a card, and it would say what the highest grossing movie of like 1992 was. I think it might have been Home Alone 2, because I always remember that's 92.
Yeah,
it was my birthday.
It was a great year. That way, it was like, in terms of, I remember I was 12, but I just remember like cinema culture exploding. I think just on all different fronts. We had Batman Returns. I remember everyone making a big deal about Sigourney Weaver's shaved head in Alien 3. I remember the Bodyguard soundtrack was just on loop everywhere you went. 92. That was just Bram Stoker's Dracula came out, and there was just horror. That Dracula stuff was everywhere in the stores, a board game, and I was 12. I just remember these iconic movies in 92 were just like, in terms of branding, like, Catwoman was everywhere. And then I remember the Home Alone 2 merch coming out around Christmas, T-shirts and backpacks, and that was in Australia. So got, good times. Good times.
It was.
Good.
It was.
Good. Well, you were born. You were just a baby, but I was.
It was a great
12.
time because I was born.
I was. Yeah. Little did I know when I was in Australia swapping Batman Returns cards. Baby Jeff came into the world.
I was over here in Boston being born that year.
Yeah. That's awesome.
But,
cool, man. Well, shall we cap it off? So give everyone their lives back.
Yeah. I mean, if they've listened this long, I mean, they're probably like us. How much of a life do they have? This is a life. But hey, I appreciate all of you stuck around for an hour and 38 minutes we're on right now.
My God.
This will be a good one for a car ride. You guys driving in the summer, taking a vacation, road trip.
2 car rides.
Yeah, this is the one for the road trip.
Yeah, and if you review your data and it looks like people listened, I'll come back on in a year or something and we can see where we're at, But it's been great. I really appreciate you having me on, and I'm grateful for everyone who tuned in and supporting the industry. Thank you.
Yeah, no, same here. Thank you to you for taking the time and taking a huge chunk of your day to do this, and much appreciated, and lots of good insight and conversation. So I have a feeling people have enjoyed this episode, and we'll definitely have you back. So I'll put all the links in the description that I mentioned. So we'll put your you want me to put your Twitter handle down there if people want to follow along?
Put my Twitter, Twitter, Instagram, whatever you want to do. Yeah. Okay. All's good.
Cool. So yeah, you can check all Adam's stuff out. It'll be in the description of YouTube. If you're on Spotify or Apple, if you're on the audio version, it'll be in the episode details and description. But all the links will be there. So follow along and check out his articles with the Academy and everywhere else that he's writing, and just support what he's doing because he's doing good work for physical. So I love it.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Thank you, everyone.
So that was our interview with Adam Yeend. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know it went on for a long time. This is probably our longest interview, but I just love talking to Adam, and he has so much knowledge about the industry, and he's worked. He's been there. He's been handling upfront 4K and Blu-ray titles. So, other than people who have done restorations, he's probably the closest person I've ever got to, someone who's actually pushing these titles out into the market with what his job was. I mean, he was title manager, essentially product manager for all of these great Fox 4K and Blu-ray titles for several years. So super interesting conversation. I'll definitely have to have him back and talk some more about his time at Fox and what he's been up to in the years since. But hope you guys enjoyed that. If you want more from the podcast, make sure you're following along, or you subscribe to us on YouTube where you can watch the video version, and all my social media links and links to Adam's social media and websites will be down in the description. So make sure you check those out. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Stay safe out there, and I'll talk to you soon.
Coming soon! Be sure to subscribe to the Films at Home podcast using your favorite app so you don't miss another episode. And while you're there, don't forget to rate and review this podcast, which helps us out tremendously. You can also help support us by watching our short-form content over on YouTube and TikTok by searching Films at Home. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at films_at_home. The intro and outro were created by Elin Osborne. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.